expanding on your consciousness, because the root of your consciousness clears up concepts, which is what is needed for everybody, so that we can free ourselves. And keep this in mind, Lou Jolly said, European is living off your virtues. I.e., he's a vampire, that's what it really means. That's the whole point. He's taking advantage of ignorance, he promotes ignorance, and takes advantage of ignorance. One of the issues that we're discussing is the nature of driver's license fraud. And keep in mind, that comes under feudal law system versus a colonial law system. So we want to establish the fact with you already, because we're going to erase this and go into some other things, is that feudal law is the warlike character of Albion, what you call Roman European styles of government, which has always perpetrated wars, forced servitude, serfdom, stuff like that. The Constitution for the United States of North America is derivative from Muslim law. Its character is allodial, which means it recognizes people's rights, liberties, right of property, due process, intelligent economic systems based on moral substance principles. And that is the nature of the Constitution for the United States of America. That must be comprehended by you so that you can understand different discussions that take place. The things that are conflicting in your life relative to your right of travel, forced driver's license, etc., forced insurance for private corporations that give kickbacks to the politicians, etc., with no controls, and arbitrary taxation comes under feudal systems. The conflicts that you're experiencing now in North America, particularly with the poverty and the economics, has been the clash between these two systems. One of the greater problems is, and problems are, of the problems, inclusive of those problems, is that aside from the few people who study and who are more aware of the history, most of the masses are aware that the persons who are operating in government in North America at this time are feudalists. And they're assuming that they are legitimate government. They are not, they are imposters. Are we clear? And because these things have not been discussed, people go on about their lives suffering, losing property, being fined for exercising rights that belong to them both divinely and under constitutional law, which have been converted into crimes, which the driver's license is one. And it's very important for you to look at that because it covers many areas of social, political, economics in North America. And it is one of the major tools that foreign Europeans have used to subjugate indigenous peoples around the world, particularly those in North America who have been branded artificially, Negroes, blacks, colored, West Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, etc., etc., etc. Those are the main targets to feed the monster. And the driver's license is the instrument by which they enter the door. So it is more than what it appears on the surface. And one of the other things that you must recognize, and keep this in your head so that when we're discussing these things, because we're not going to always be going through all the fine points, so we want to make sure that you are rooted in the foundation. Driver's licenses, make this very clear, take notes, apply to commercial entities only. Do not apply to natural living, breathing persons. Are we clear? Meaning like this, you have a corporation. Now there's another dynamics that you must keep in mind. Meaning like we come into the center, right? And you pretty much manage the center from a rightful position, from an intelligent position, from proper order position. If there's something we want to do in here, you know, we are capable to do certain things just as you are. However, the jurisdiction must come through you. That's a principle. It is not a point of salami, baloney, or this is intelligence. It's how things operate. So when you're talking about licenses that are issued, keep in mind licenses are issued by law under what you call officers of customs and duties. And they are issued under this principle and this principle alone to corporate entities that are operating under the privilege of doing business in the lands of another prince or entity, nation. Meaning that licenses are forwarded to foreigners who are operating on the lands of another. Which means like, all right, say for instance, if this is a household, you can always look at things from the position of family to understand government. This is a household, say you're a mother, right? So the children come through here and we bring our children too, and they're all having fun, right? We will discipline all the children. However, the ones whose house it is has a little bit more privileges and rights than those who are just entering, because there are certain rules that they must follow. You might be a little bit lax on yours, and it's not that you're intentionally being that way, but this is their house. So the neighbor's children having fun, they're not going to be running off on the walls and putting their feet up on the walls, so they're going to have. Not that they don't do that, and this is what you must understand that operates in governments where licenses apply. Are we clear? Now, your right in law, under law, by law, through law. See that conveyance you have out there? In law, that conveyance is no different than a wagon that you pull down the street. Are we clear?
Yes.
You don't have to register to nobody but you. Are we clear?
Yes.
There is no imposition that government has a right to impose on you with that property to travel the public roads and highways freely and unmolested. Now, the variance comes with foreign corporations that may be doing business here this is very important, in a corporate capacity. That must be very clear to you. Then such benefactors of the corporation, the owner, must get a license for the vehicle, not for the person operating. Are we clear?
Yes.
The licenses are on the burden of the profiteers. In other words, the corporation is licensed, not the natural person. And licenses apply to corporate entities only. Excuse me, I'm going to do this. Even when you're dealing with issues concerning licenses, because one of the things that they have done by converting rights into crimes is that they have listed the natural person, living being, as a corporate entity and converted the obligations of a foreign corporate entity doing business on privileges under corporate privilege and corporate benefit, and put that burden on the natural person, therefore converting rights that already belong to them into crimes. That's what they base these tickets on. Are we clear?
Yes.
Sears Roebuck, as an example. You know, they got these refrigerators and stuff, dented and stuff like that, they sell in certain places, and they got other businesses that they deal with, tools and stuff like that. The licenses are applied to that corporation, not to the people that come into the parking lot to go buy stuff. They have twisted it. That is how they've converted to what you would call bureaucratized forced servitude. Are we clear?
Yes.
You must understand these principles founded, not belief, it's fact, do research. Some of these points we put in driver's license fraud, you know, and I have actually an advanced version, but basically that version comes from a lecture that I did, absent of a lot of other notes, but I try to keep it simple, you know, because people's attention span is difficult. You know, and so if you can try to give them a foundation and encouraged them to study, they would recognize on their own. Keep this in mind. What I've just told you automatically gives you in your mind protocols of operations, even without knowing anything more about law. Just simply knowing the distinction between the natural, living, breathing, thinking person that comes from the womb of a mother and the artificial corporate entity constructed by virtue of the 14th Amendment when they closed the Freedmen's Bureau, creating what is known as the straw. And what they've done is they've flipped it and listed us as that straw. This is where Negro, black, and color comes in to identify from a corporate chattel principle, not by bloodline, Christian property, and thus licensed, because they're artificial persons. Do you understand? Now, it's not complex, but it needs to be refined to people so that they can look at it, so they can use their intelligence. Because if you don't know these things and you walk into those trade courts, and keep in mind, traffic court is trade court. It's slave trade. Traffic means trade. It's commerce. Are we clear?
Yes.
It doesn't deal with rights, it deals with privileges. Are we clear? Privileges must be distinguished from rights. Rights are fundamentally in society unalienable, inalienable, not capable, not rightfully, nor lawfully capable of being sold to or transferred to another. Are we clear? Privileges are the opposites. They can be sold, they can be licensed. That is, that you're taking some liberty that someone gives you that has the power that you don't to grant you that activity, thus the license comes into play. Are we clear? Outside of that venue, the license plays no role. If you understand that, you understand your arguments. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Yes.
Now, so whenever we're talking about writs that you do, or that any conversations that you may have with any corporate entity that's approaching you as the natural person and misclassifying you as a corporate entity, the way they're talking to you, you must recognize the language and must correct them. Not that they don't know, but you must demonstrate that you know. Understand the word civilian. People say, well, I don't know law, but I need to get a lawyer because we're just civilians. And all. Civilians are required to know the law. And you need to know that. So when you see these so-called leader guys and Grand Siki guys and stuff talking about draw, lead, and teach civics, etc., all you need to do is read the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, and he says, help me in my mission. Then he tells you what the mission is: to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution of the United States of America. That's his statement. And if that ain't civics supreme, nothing else is. However, infiltrators and liars have lied on him, and thus, this is one of the reasons we have to come out in these venues. Because where it should be taught is not taught by virtue of people agreeing with J. Edgar Hoover to undermine Noble Draw Lady and use the name absent of the instruction. Are we clear?
Yes.
Now, I go to those venues because I'm part of Temple, but I'm part of the nation first. The issue before us is the affairs of the nation. Noble Draw Lady told the Moors, study, 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 study well, and when you would have studied well and would ask me what to study next, I would reply, study yourselves. Then he said, be careful, Moors, for some of your own people wearing turbans and fezzes will be trying to put you back into slavery. So we already gave you the caveats. All you need to do is pay attention to the principles, and you'll see them like neon lights. You need not be confused. We need to be busy about our mothers and our fathers' works. You understand? And we need to be on point. We need to understand principles. When you understand principles, you can bring cures. When you don't understand principles, you're going to be going to spinning your wheels. And even when you're operating in principle, you're going to have opposition. Because all of your strengths will be tested. This is why it's important for us to stay on principle. Are we clear?
Yes.
Now, as you all know, we delivered to you in past meetings, etc. I don't think we gave you some of Louis McFadden's stuff, but that's in another book. We'll get that to you later. But we did give you James Tropicant's response or dissertation before the floor of the House of Representatives and Congress concerning Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's actions with the war powers, etc. Even though he didn't go into the details, those who know law and history know what he was talking about. But in his speech, he revealed information that generally has been kept from the public. This is why they set him up and locked him up about 9 years. You understand? This is aside from the fact that all those politicians are either Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, etc., you know, Shriners, etc., Blue House Masons, etc., York Masons. Doesn't matter. Certain things they're not supposed to be revealing to the public. And one is the feudal nature of the U.S. democracy system, which is a thorough, absolute imposition, imposter government, thoroughly a fraud, and that's what's been operating here. That's been suppressing our people, that they have been calling racism, while looking at people's attitudes instead of recognizing it was the very government that was being used to actually destroy them. Do you understand? And then using subdivision states of entity corporations to execute actually inquisition operations in North America and veiling it under law when it was actually color of law, and the DMV is a color of law institution to activate secret treaty of the Roman dictum, particularly targeting our people. This is why it is well known across this country, in all the little cities, that so-called, we're qualifying, persons branded as Negro, Black, and colored, and Puerto Ricans are the major targets. They sit like spiders behind billboards and stuff, waiting for you to come past. And they pounce on you. In other words, if a European can come past 90 miles an hour, they look, let him go, you come in, you're doing 5 miles, now above the speed limit, and they come, lock you down, call 50 parked cars, and make sure you have your hands on your wheel, so they don't use it as a justification to shoot your tires out, starting before they get you. Because this is their operation. And it confuses our people because their immediate thoughts are the morality of this thing. Because they don't know that these people are executing the secret treaty of Rome. They just think they're prejudiced. They don't like black people type mentality. You know, that's the tag. When, one, they're not black. They're executing the Inquisition operations in North America, operating a feudal system, and we're busy thinking about colors, racism, none of which is going on. All of that is designed to keep you busy so that you don't address the real root of the problem. Therefore, you have no cures until you deal with the root of the problem, you see? All right, so you must know where licenses have their origin. They're not founded in Constitution. And keep this in mind, this is very important. Governments are established by men to preserve the rights of the men and women and children of a society. It has no rights to give. It only has obligations and duties, which are spelled out in the Constitution, which is a check system of government. Constitutions do not give you rights. Constitution preserves and secures and protects your right from corrupt government. Are we clear? Which is why those who know the truth of civilization teach civics and teach the people to enforce the Constitution. And when you fail to enforce that Constitution, it is considered wrongfully, but they do it anyway, that you have waived your rights. Then they start instituting their private corruption, and this is what has happened to North America. In other words, the people have gone to sleep, and the corruptors have thoroughly corrupted the government and have overthrown the government from within. And one of the instruments was the driver's license that appears so innocent. You understand? They've used that instrument alone to enslave people. And it looks so innocent. You understand? Keep in mind, the U.S. democracy, and as we read last night, in Delaware, it is important, and I'm going to read it again if I have a copy of it right now. That's what those who don't know. And it's not, it's not new news. It's not something that you don't know. But to put this in context, I think it is wise that we be aware of the dynamics of what we're dealing with. I think I have a copy of that. Let me see if I still have it. Now, democracy, now as you know, it's not, go ahead.
So, what's the remedy? Since we know that driver's license is an illegal instrument, so what's the remedy
To start.
of not using it?
To start. The basics that they do, what you have is opposites operating. Planes that are not based in truth operating. You have Europeans claiming to be Americans, and we have not challenged it. You have Europeans claiming to be white men, and we have not challenged it. Both of them we've supported, which in law constitutes that we're waiving our right, because they're not. Europeans are not Americans, just like Americans are not Europeans.
Right.
Although any one of the people may be in different parts of the world at different times. So we're talking political jurisdiction. We have forgotten that these Europeans that are operating in North America doing all of these anti-social activities, biases and prejudices and lynchings and hangings and dragging people behind trucks and blowing up little girls in church, etc., and then killing people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and then shutting down the records and sealing them for 50 and 100 years and stuff like that, and then sending your children around the world to kill other people that are Asiatic in the name of democracy and calling it law of God and country are absolute frauds. The people don't know that because they don't study. United States Republic is a Republican form of government that's founded on colonial principles, which is opposite of the U.S. democracy, which is in operation now, which is a democracy system, which I'll read you in the war manual, their own stuff, to let you understand and let you know that by no accident, they absolutely know what they're doing. Our problem is that we don't know. Now, some of you do, but I'm talking about us in general, which is why we have to do these kind of classes. Because your remedy is to first correct your status. Everything starts with status. This is the reason why they misclassify us. This is like Drawley said, why did the European coin the names Negro, Black, and Color, etc.? To steal your birthright. Therefore, you got to study what birthright is to understand the function. Then you got to understand their motive of operation, modus operandi. So most people just think, based on their education or lack of education, that Negro, Black, and Color are Afrocentric identities. And as soon as they accept that, they're just giving up their birthright. It's not willingly, it's out of ignorance, but the effect is the same. Meaning that if somebody stomps on your foot deliberately, or they just walk in past and stomp on your foot accidentally, pain ain't less. If somebody wants to play surgeon with you and they don't know nothing about the anatomy of the body, if they start coming at you with a butter knife, it's pretty much wise for you to move. However, if you decide to stay and you're looking, one of your cheeks is over there, don't get confused about it and don't, how my cheeks get over there? It's like we gotta stop being naive. You understand what I'm saying to you? Now, for instance, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government for every state in the Union, which means that's a requirement for them to even be a part of the Union. They must have a Republican form of government. Therefore, every state's constitution must be Republican in nature. Anything else is a fraud. Are we clear?
Right.
Now, what has happened? You'll hear these politicians walking around always talking about our democracy. Do you see the people contesting it?
Nope.
They're considered have waived their rights. So if you don't make a public declaration, an affirmative, it is assumed that you're in that class. In other words, they've created classes of systems to preserve European servitude in the Western Hemisphere. This is one of their tools. Islam.
When I was pulled over, I said, "What are you pulling me over for?" "Oh, you know you know the procedure." I said, "What procedure?" I said, "What property did I injure? Who did I injure somebody's property or hurt someone?" I said, "What are you pulling me over for?" He goes, "Oh, it's your license." I said, "A license, an illegal instrument, or you want to see my identification?" Oh, he got pissed. And actually, I said that to him. So that's when he told the person I was dealing with that I got smart with. I said, "I have a right to ask him questions." I said, "I have every right in the world to ask him anything I want." He got mad because I started asking questions.
Now, this is protocols. So write this down. Protocols, whenever you get stopped in your travels on the public roads and highways, your first protocol is look for the name and the badge number. Right? Don't start running your mouth immediately. Fred Disseldorfer. Is that your name? You know, that's how you're talking to him. And you always talk with, respectfully. So you don't, not that you don't have a right to, but knowing what their agenda is. Because they always try to provoke, because they already know that they are criminals.
Right.
So they want to try to revert it on you. So your protocol automatically, number one, what is your probable cause for hindering me in my liberties of traveling on the public roads and highways, exercising a right secured by the Constitution and treaties? Mr. Fred, what's your last name? Dinkeldorfer, badge number 523, whatever it may be. He said, "I want to see your slip." And you say, "Yeah, Fourth Amendment warrant signed by a competent judge. Give me your full name while we're talking, right? Because you're asking for my private property. Absent of a Fourth Amendment warrant." Now, let's mark this down. Meanwhile, I want your full name, the district that you're operating from, and your surety bond number. And then we can trade places. And I'll give you my stuff, and you give me your information. However, if you don't have it available, call your superior. That's if you feel like waiting around. You understand? But those are protocols from the door. Immediately, keep this in mind. This is also why we also issue in these little packages the oath of ethics that all of them must take. The oath of ethics, they're bound to preserve the rights of the people under Constitution principle. This is why you also carry that. And remind yourself, and this is why we always tell people to have that, and you also take one side of it and make it an exhibit whenever you're dealing with that. And that goes with, when they give, they give you a ticket, that goes in the case of the ticket, and you put the ticket number on there, with an exhibit number on there, etc. And with the, and remember, don't call them officers because they weren't elected. They want you to call them officers, right? And when you call them officers, that's what you call tacit consent to jurisdiction. Because they're not officers, so if you say it, that's sort of like voting them as an officer at the moment while they're doing business with you. And so then they take the position of the sheriff, which they don't have. I'm telling you what's going on. This is why it's important for you to understand language and understand these fundamentals. And even though you already know that they're criminals, don't speak anything like harsh or anything like that, because they want excuses to kill people.
Yes.
Because that's one of the commitments under the Treaty of Verona to reduce the population and to justify it. You know, even if your wallet is the wrong shape, they'll shoot you. You understand? But they know that they have also the Knights of Columbus judges and Klan members who are operating in the government to back them up. Because they're denying due process because they're not upholding the government. Keep in mind, they're not United States officials. They're U.S. democracy knights for the Popes of Rome. This is what people need to know about them. This is why they act arrogant. And so if you know what you're dealing with, you need to know fundamental protocols on how to operate with them. And this is also why, even when you're doing any writs, you also have what you call co-signers, at least in triplicity, to create that triangle. You understand? And also on your own stuff, and this is why you fly your colors. And you fly your colors because it automatically sets up diversity, Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, and it is not assumed, it is already set forth. You understand? This is another reason why you have your nationality, because it automatically sets diversity. So even if they had a legitimate court, the court must go through due process because they have no jurisdiction, they have to set it. And keep in mind that Eisenhower in '54 closed down consular courts because they had all the Negro leader preacher guys that they was paying off. You understand? To try to get these people to start agreeing to be colored people and Negroes under the 14th Amendment, so they could march and pray around and then would not have a venue, because consular court is the only venue in which they're supposed to be dealing with us. You got to understand these things to understand the politics on how they're operating. Now, with the Negro preachers, actually working for the corporate state, and the people thinking they're working for Jesus and God and Allah and all this sort of stuff, they believe these people don't know these people are agents for the corporate state and actually are selling them. You understand? And the ignorant people are the first ones to defend these people. But they say Jesus and they give them the grandmom's house that should have went to their grandchildren. You understand? Not knowing that they are agents for the state. And they tell the people that, we're working for God. And by the power of God. And then when they marry people, they say, by the power invested in me by the state of New Jersey. But they're telling you the truth. They're state agents. And the first thing they do, take that marriage certificate, send it to the Department of Commerce. They list it subcategorically in the Department of Orphans, which makes the descendants of that womb non-descendable. And wards of the state automatically. This is again why they take liberties. And then they ask for ID. Would they ask you for an ID of your bloodline? No. That driver's certificate, which is a contract that converts your rights into a crime. And then you present it as an identity, and it's not identity, which makes you a fraud. Therefore, they're innocent because you're giving an instrument claiming it is identification because they said so, and it isn't. So it's a business contract in commerce.
I flipped the script on it.
Yes, because identity doesn't have an expiration date.
That's what he got all bad about.
Do you understand? Not only that, it's not a contract for traveling or not. Your license is expired. What, my identity is expired? People can't even think. They say, give me identification, give me a driver's license. Driver's license is not identification. Right. But they have to groom people to start believing that. And the people become lemmings and actually are delivering their rights without a challenge because they don't know what their rights are. It's one reason why we're probably taught their rights. So the deal of it is that you must understand that when they approach you, that there's a protocol of questions you ask them. And you can say for the record. So keep in mind, when you ask them for their name, their badge number, and their surety bond, keep this in mind, oaths and surety bonds go together. When oaths are filed of any particular person that are public servants, and all of them are bound to this, the surety bond is connected to it. This is why when you ask for them, they do not produce them. Do you know why they don't produce them? Because most of them don't have them. So they're asking you for insurance under a color of law when the surety bond is their insurance that they're supposed to produce when they stop you. How come they don't do that? Because they know most people are ignorant. And so what you have is Klan members, and if you notice in most of the so-called police departments, they're majority European males.
Right. Yep.
With extreme Klan attitudes. You know, sometimes they kind of cover it up, but their arrogance still shows through. You know, and you go to any courtroom any day, and you see the majority of the people is people, Asiatics,
Yep.
and Puerto Ricans. The
Yep.
majority.
I went to federal court, that's why I said
Any
that.
one of them, they run townships because we're the target. They throw in a few Europeans here and there to make it look like, oh, they're doing it to their own, so therefore, yeah, you know, but, and our people even say things like that. However, it doesn't remove the fact that the process is void of law. The court has no constitutional foundation whatsoever. The highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States, have declared all traffic courts as incompetent. And they are administrative clerks pretending to be judges. In fact, they're not only committing impersonation of officers, they're racketeering. Let me finish then ask the question. This is the reason why most of the traffic courts do not have records. If it doesn't have a record, it's not a court. Keep this in mind. Without the record, you can't appeal. Why? Because an appeal requires the transcript of the record. If you understand these fundamentals, it gives you consciousness of protocol, which all of our people need to know, and you need to teach it to the children before they're traveling on the road. Not after they get in trouble, etc., and stuff like that, then they're caught in the system, because they're going to be targeted anyway. So if we would teach our people those things necessary to make them better citizens, then half of these corruptions that are normal, particularly in our communities, would not exist. As an example, you know, just like when we were coming home last night, right? One of the things that we were talking about when we were coming through South Philly, where in the European neighborhoods, down South Philly, they're parked 3 deep, sideways, on the curb, on the building, wrapped around the pole, and everything, right? You don't see nobody running nowhere with no tickets. You come anywhere in West Philly, North Philly, etc., people mind their business, car parked in their driveway, car mind their business. They go find tires and ain't got enough tread on them, give them a ticket for that. Somebody got a tinted window in their vehicle, they would stop them and call 5 cars, coming on both sides with guns and everything, looking for an excuse to shoot them with tinted windows. You know, they don't even have to be speeding, don't have to be doing anything. Give them 59 tickets, do all kinds of traces for them, research them in Afghanistan, see if they was there, see if they paid Santa Claus and laid a bill. I'm telling you. But that's all Treaty of Rome. Do you understand? That's all those operations, all of those operations comes under the U.S. democracy. They're absolutely disallowed under the United States Republic. Are we clear?
Yes.
Islam.
Knowing this, and knowing that the Supreme Court already said that they're criminals, why are they still operating?
Because the people must enforce the law.
Gotcha.
Keep this in
I
mind.
understand.
Back up again. When the Moors brought the Europeans into form of government, and this comes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, sis, they are deists. Deity, Mercury, Jove, etc., Hermes Trismegistus, etc. They are deists. They're not right-wing Christians. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Barclay as agent of business, George Washington, they were not right-wing Christians. They're deists. That's what qualified them to be part of this government. The United States government was absolutely not founded on Christian doctrines.
Deists. What is deists?
Deists are those who what you would call study ancient Asiatic African culture. This is why they're all Masons. That's why they all got fezzes. That's why George Washington's lodge down there in Alexandria, Virginia, got fezzes of all the lodges. Ford's down there, Harry Truman, President of Mexico in the 1800s, with the fez over with Allah written on it. It's no secret except to the people here who keep thinking these people are Christians. And then they trying to be Christians, if you understand. This is where we violated ourselves. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we don't even know the history here. Do you understand? Our concepts are wrong. But it's for the purpose of maintaining servitude. Now, the trading banner, like they call the Star-Spangled Banner, people loosely call it the American flag because the Europeans have been calling it the American flag. What it is an American amity and commerce trade banner, specifically between the Moors and the Christians, i.e., fundamental to the operations of the United States Republic doing business in Morocco, Northwest Africa. It is an agreement. It is not the national flag, it is the national commerce flag. Are we clear? Your red stripes represent 7 Elim. It is Moorish. The white flags represent the European nations, Dutch, Germany, etc., England, etc. And their corporate businesses to do business here, it's a commerce flag. Your canton with your stars is the ethereal plane or the cosmological character upon which it is built. Are we clear? It is not the national flag. The national flag is the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. That's the Al-Moroccan flag, the American flag. Are we clear? Yes. However, when people are first given this information, a lot of information or a lot of concepts that they have are not challenged because it causes confusion. And so people say, that's the Moorish American flag. They look at the 2 flags. People say that, and it's not correct. Y'all got this? Let me kind of give you a little bit of demonstration so that you can comprehend a little bit. Not only that, when that trading banner is properly displayed, it's actually displayed like this. That way, not this way. We fly it that way, but it's actually that way. You understand? Now, for this to be operating properly, see, this is the American flag. Right? And this is what we call the binding flag for them to do business here. That's red. This is red. That's white, Canton, with a green cedar tree, what they call the tall cedars of Lebanon. That's also one of the secret societies. It's called also the Bunker Hill flag, the continental flag, flag of the continent. This flag must be flown with this flag for this flag to be legitimate in its operation. Are we clear? When these flags are flying, they're actually supposed to be all 3 of them together.
Right. Okay.
Sovereign sanctioned union. Do you understand?
Yes.
And you will see in their secret societies, like say in George Washington's Lodge, you see the tall cedars of Lebanon, which is one of the secret societies, and they take the canton out here, and that's union. In other words, you've got to know a little bit about your history so that you can understand the politics. And also when Dwali, when Dwali says to the Moors, you're part and parcel of the said government, you need to know what he's saying. But because we've been held under subjugation, we have this tendency to think from a subordinate position when actually we're the superior. Mentally, we become inferior. Politically, we've been forced into an inferior position, but in fact, we're really the nobles and the sovereigns of the land who've just been overthrown.
Yes.
This is the foundation of their attitudes towards you that you've been calling prejudice. And once you understand these things, you understand it's not a defense of their activities, you understand their motivations. When you understand their motivations and they comprehend that you do, their attitude will change because they cannot maintain the superiority complex. The superiority complex is based on the fact that they know that most of us don't know. Are we clear? All right, now, and also on the fact that they have enough people on our side that are selling you out.
Yes.
Do you understand? And keeping you intimidated. Well, you can't do that. You know, that type of stuff. And, you know, when you start submitting to the bull that they feed you. You know what I'm saying? Now, you got this date, right? So I'm going to use it, right?
Yep.
And how many, actually it's longer than this, but you're given a date. How many years was just flying over Northwest Africa, Northwest of Mexico?
10,000 years.
Over 10,000 years.
Over 10,000. And really it's really over 70, but because it used to, yeah,
7?
yeah, it used to be white when the gold started, under the Moabite nation.
President.
How long was this flag doing business here in the Northwest continent?
300 years.
Not quite.
What's the,
Well, 1776 was the 200-year anniversary.
200 years? 2 something?
Back in 76.
You understand?
No,
Change the piece of
no,
picture.
200 plus.
200, yes.
Huh?
Right, 200. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but the point of it is, your
Dates? Yeah. Plus
Yeah.
200 years.
now,
I'll give you those so we got.
American is a corruption of Alvarado. Amer comes from ancient Mexico. Rica comes from America. Al is Moorish Latin, which means to descend down from, or to come down from, coming down from. Al-Moroccan, American means descendants of Moroccans. See the difference when you know how to read? You understand? But if you don't know that, your concepts will be colored by the way Europeans present your history and interject himself into it as the superior. You see the point? And so we also have this tendency, out of ignorance, to apply our own bloodline title to him, which gives him sovereign power.
Right.
But you forgot his colonies. And now you walk around agreeing with their overseer Negro guys, talking about, look what America did to the last man. The whole concept is wrong. Thoroughly incompetent. America is their own land. They're the Americans, and they're calling the Europeans Americans, which you're transferring your sovereignty there. He's a colonist. They're Romans. Stop calling him out of his name and stop calling yourself out of your name. Because every time you do it, you're transferring sovereign right. These are fundamentals that need to be taught because people fail in that because they don't know better. They think they can make statements and just get away with it. And when you make those statements, you are giving up your birthright. This is why it's important for civics to be absolutely taught properly. Because people's concepts are wrong. And that gray area that it leaves cavities for opportunists to come in and try to sell you packages on your birthright which can't be sold. They're only taking advantage of people who haven't studied. You see? This is when you have dirty morals that keep coming in, for profit. And then you have dirty morals who should be teaching this and don't teach it because they're trying to get seat warmers. Or trying to play reverse church. And so these conflicts make it necessary, in accord with the divine ministry of the certificates that are given to the grand chiefs, to take this information to the hedges and the highways. One day I'll bring my certificate in to you and show you. It says hedges and the highways. They're playing clubs, aren't they?
Yes.
And then they criticize those who take this information to the hedges and the highways. Why? Because it exposes them. Do you understand? That's why you get those kind of conversations. And it's not that some people ain't out there doing that, but even those who are doing that are doing more than they're doing. Do you understand? They at least take this information to the people, to whom it belongs. Because until their head is right, they can't stand up to Goliath. See, because when you go smacking Goliath around, don't worry, he's going to punch you. So learn to duck. And then start getting that smooth stone correct, and when you smack him in the pineal gland, stop missing. Therefore, there's fundamental protocols, if you get the whole point. And what it means when you take his head off with his own sword, which means the law that he's bound to, proves it. You don't get caught in spurious argument. Spurious argument is 14th Amendment stuff. Therefore, protocols are in order. You see? And so, red flag, white candle, green cedar tree. Red flag, 5-pointed green star in the center. This brings this into operations in North America. When they violate that Constitution, which is the covenant, all operative rights that the Europeans have in any form of law operating in the Western Hemisphere is dead. And any so-called U.S. citizens which are juristic, as distinguished from the true Aboriginal indigenous people of the land, which is two different statuses, cannot be distinguished. Why? Because it's a birthright. Now you understand the principles that you see taking place in other governments when they're having problems with colonial operations, and you see the presidents in South America and other countries like Hugo Chavez in Bolivia, Argentina, South Africa, where they nationalize the electric grid, nationalize the apartment buildings because these European hedge funds are locking their people down and are raping their people, and they're nationalizing the rice fields and the sugarcane fields and everything, and then these Europeans don't like them.
Right.
Why? They're claiming their right. You must do the same. You cannot do it if you're not in your proper person. Are we clear?
Yes.
Which is why they created the Negro, Black, and Colored brands, so that when you started arguing rights, and that brand is there, your whole argument is dead. I don't care how eloquently you present it. I don't care how many chandeliers you put up. You know what I mean? How many speakers you got in front of you. How many boys on the side like this, guards and stuff, looking all important, Negroish and all that stuff. No. It's not recognized anywhere on the planet called Earth, because they are in total dishonor of their mothers and their fathers, from whom the law comes. Because all nations put their trust in the names of your forefathers, not in some brands that you've accepted from some European that start telling you that human beings are crayons and you bought into it. And they're going to sit around and talk about rights. Meanwhile, they're operating on law that your forefathers set up when you're not even on it. This is what our problem is, very clear. And then we turn around saying, that's that white man stuff. Well, they're telling the absolute truth, except that a European ain't a white man, you are. I mean, our own biases even undermine us, because we don't even know language. Our people think it's this, and it's a status. And so these little subtleties, if we don't correct amongst our people and they keep going out into the world, they're going to keep getting beat up. They're going to get beat up when you're right. You know what I mean? But at least you're going to reduce the losses. You get the point? you go out there wrong with misconceptions, because that's miseducation that they taught you, you just setting yourself up. You understand that? And so the fundamentals must be comprehended, must be understood, so that you can follow. Your experience, not surprising, you know, and as I was talking to you, it is because I want you to be right. Although you were right that they were wrong. You understand? Because once you start studying, you can catch the BS. And then what they were trying to do is pull rank on you. You understand? They're pulling rank on you. However, I'm so glad. You know, but that one of the issues, one of the interesting things, and one of the good things is usually when sisters start really getting this right, and that mother energy comes out, because the mother energy is a desire to protect family.
Right.
It's by nature. It's not, you know, like, ain't like you got an attitude. You can get one now if you want it. But it ain't like that. It's nature.
That's right.
Particularly when you know somebody's snowing in your face. You may not know it all, but you know BS when the breeze comes through. That ain't peanut butter. You understand what I'm saying? And when they try to pull on you, and so what we want to do, what we attempt to do, honorably, is do the best that we can to our limit, to make the people competent, that the people can take this to the next degrees that they need to be in. Because when we leave here or any other venue where information is given, you know, you're on your own in a sense. Therefore, you're not supposed to be the follower of anybody. You're supposed to be capable. And it was all coming to you for training in college. You know, I don't want to be come out there, you know, and somebody coming at me and I'm, you know, let me see how I'm doing for you. How am I supposed to be standing like this? You know, the practice, thank you, brother. The practice is so that you can operate naturally and smoothly. Sometimes even when you're kind of off balance, knowing how to get your balance, how to square up. You understand? Just natural. It must become your own. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's the point.
Yes.
And so certain redundant issues that we will make is so that it becomes your own, that becomes natural with you. That is not artificial. Oh, yeah, let me see. No. Understand the concept so that you can speak without voice. If they strip you of everything, you can speak.
Yes.
You understand? Because the issue is this: how they test you. They take what you got, or they don't follow you stuff, then see how you want to handle it. You understand? They may come absolutely from your stand, but not from the angle that you present. And you may think they're not addressing, and they are addressing, they're testing you. You understand what I'm saying? Because remember, they already know what your culture is, because they were taught it. And other parts, they stole it. You know, so when you're looking at the European, thank you very much, brother. We don't always look at, he stole this. The Moors brought them into civilization with the Renaissance for 2-3 centuries that they admit to. 13th, you know, the 16th, 14th through 16th century. The Moors entered into Europe to clean up Queen Europa's spot. See, because we accepted England or the land of Angles to them. Because that's not theirs either. That's ours too. You understand? And so they were in such disorder and still acting half savage. So logically, the Moors come in there to clean up the house and bring them out of darkness or the medieval period into marvelous light. And this is where you get the tradition in the universities of the seven liberal arts. The Moors brought that into Italy, which we call Italy, and into Andalusia, we call today Spain. You understand? And they taught the Europeans mathematics, calculus, advanced trigonometry, architecture, the principle of the equilateral triangle, etc. Advanced masonry, reverse